President Trump and the Trump administration had enough, controversially called in the National Guard, called in all of these things, kind of federalized it, even brought in the National Guard from other states. We had J.B. McCuskey from West Virginia, and a lot of states said, yeah, we're going to come and help out, especially neighboring areas. I mean, it really is a neighboring area, Washington, D.C., when you have Virginia and West Virginia in these areas. And now you have Mayor Bowser, again, someone that I don't think you'd expect to. I mean, when I heard this, I actually read the article first, and I turned to Will here, and I said, does she say this with like sarcasm, with laughs? And no, it's with what sounds to be complete sincerity.
We greatly appreciate the surge of officers that enhance what MPD has been able to do in this city.
We greatly appreciate the surge of officers. That is not something you expect to hear.
Mayors across the country and governors, I think of Chicago and in the state of Illinois, with both the governor and mayor there holding press conferences saying that Trump lives rent-free in the governor's mind, meanwhile was standing in front of Trump Tower in Chicago. You start to see the pushback from the party at large, and it's in stark contrast of how the tone and the words spoken by the mayor of D.C. And to be frank, I mean, the mayor of D.C. Has a little bit of the luxury, Jordan, of not really having control over the city in the way that others do. But she doesn't have to say it like this.
No, and she represents the real Washington, D.C. That's not the headquarters for the federal government and the headquarters for all the companies and downtown D.C. and law firms and lobbyists and businesses. Defense contractors that really make up what you see when you go to Washington, D.C., maybe on a tourist visit, or if you've worked in Washington, D.C., or you have family that does. There's that corridor, which is already pretty much under federal control because those are all federal buildings. They have their own police force, the executive branch, different forces, the Supreme Court police, the Capitol Hill police. You've got of course, Secret Service. You've got all these police. That is a tiny percentage of Washington, D.C., and the rest of Washington, D.C. falls under Mayor Bowser. She's got to deal with that. She doesn't get that. So she's now getting the benefit of what a small part of D.C. has gotten for decades, so that her citizens, really the lifelong residents and families that have lived and grown up in D.C., are now getting the benefit of having the security that the kind of political side of Washington, D.C. had.
For carjackings, the difference between this period, this 20-day period of this federal surge and last year represents a 87% reduction in carjackings in Washington, D.C. We know that when carjackings go down, when the use of gun goes down, when homicide or robbery go down, neighborhoods feel safer and are safer. So this surge has been important to us for that reason.
Here's a headline within the last week from CNN. Trump's D.C. takeover produces moderate drop in crime and a huge spike in immigration arrests.
Yeah, I guess they just didn't wait to hear from Washington, D.C.'s own government. When you see what she said there. She's like, if you start out with the carjackings involve human beings and guns. So if you're down 87% in carjackings, almost 90%, that means less people who are getting injured or killed. So then you have less homicide, less gun crimes. That means there's less people on the street with weapons who want to use them for criminal reasons. And that makes neighborhoods safer. It makes people feel safer about getting out of their car and into their car in places like Washington, D.C., which is usually when this happens. It's usually, and we're getting to that closer to that season when it gets dark early. And I will tell you, it doesn't really matter where you are in Washington. When it starts getting dark at 4:45, you can't see around these corners. It's not like New York always, so you don't always feel like there's 100 people around you. You can feel kind of isolated very quickly there if you get to kind of your street, your block. And so that kind of reduction, it was interesting because I was there Tuesday, and I saw the protest against this. And these are the constituents that would be voting for Mayor Bowser. Again, they weren't waiting to see the actual results. No one's being targeted because of their race or because of the color of their skin or because of their neighborhood. It's citywide, and it's the people who actually live in Washington their whole lives. It's not the people who are there for 3 years. It's good for them too, for the people who come and go with politics. But there are 90% of Washingtonians live there, kids go to school there, and work there, and they stay. And those are the individuals that want to make sure it's not just those key areas that are safe, but that the regular neighborhoods in Washington and even some of the tougher neighborhoods in Washington are safer from gun crimes. I mean, that's what we're talking about here is carjacking. You know, 87% down is a huge number.
Well, and Jordan, you think about for how long we've heard the defund the police movements, the things of that nature, which have been a rallying cry for Democrats for years now. Yeah. You still see candidates running on that platform. You see what's something different. You see the mayor of D.C. acknowledging that a surge in resources works. You saw the mayor of Chicago on Morning Joe yesterday asked 3 times by Joe Scarborough, listen, if you have unlimited budget, and you can do these intervention forces and things that you want to do, would also having 3,000 extra police officers help you get a handle on crime? And he refused to answer the question. But then this is a Politico headline from just 2 days ago. Trump is leaning in on crime. Democrats need a better response and fast. It does seem to some degree that the walls are kind of crumbling in on this false narrative that we've known is bad for years, that if you defund the police, it becomes a better, safer city because the police are the problem.
I want to say that I have been personally engaged with Attorney General Bondi and the President's Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, and I spoke with the President this afternoon. And I was reminded of our first meeting after his reelection, where we discussed shared priorities for the district. There, I was reminded that the President's interest in cities predates his time in office, and his knowledge of D.C. had significantly increased from the first time he was in the White House. And so we knew that the priorities around safety and investment in infrastructure would be on the President's mind.
You got to give it to Mayor Bowser. I have to say this. There are very few.
That's going to make people mad.
There are very few politicians that would actually tell you how they feel, who would understand that their constituents and that the CNNs and the MSNBCs are not going to be thrilled when you praise the president or any of the opposing party's positions. I would say that for Republicans too. If you're a Republican, you start saying, yeah, the Democrats doing a good job. We live such in a divisive world right now, in a divisive country, that you can't even say that. But for her to come on and now name specifically Pam Bondi, Susie Wiles, and talk about how she's working so closely with them and directly with them, and how we've seen such a success rate, 87% of carjackings down, no murders happening on the streets. This is kind of a moment. And so I just want to say thank you to her. I mean, I know, again, people may not like that, but I don't care. Good for you for actually saying, you know what, I can reach across party lines. And not only that, to do it in a way that is honestly unnecessary. It's unnecessarily grateful.